Hello, everybody, and good very early morning. Welcome to the Insomnia stream. In case you guys couldn't tell, I got a new hat. I really like it. I don't know. People have told me that brown is my color. I don't know. I don't really always agree, but I like the hat. I think it looks nice. So today I'm going to be starting back off at chapter 4. As always, I have the screen up on the stream so that way you guys can read along if you like. I'm practicing my voice acting. I know it's not great, but I hope that you guys really enjoy it. Um, and of course, the little Pokemon are over here, so occasionally I might throw out a couple of stars, like so. So that way you guys can try and catch them. You can cause your Pokemon to jump by, as it says on the screen, putting an exclamation jump. Thank you so much for tuning in, and with that, let's go ahead and begin. Chapter 4. Bigfoot? Sam scoffed. We're in danger of being killed and you're making jokes? Shush! Hikaru instructed, its ear twitching as it craned its neck. Yes, it's him. It's Sasquatch. Sasquatch? Sam asked. Another name for Bigfoot, I explained. Okay, so what do we do? I imagine he's strong, but I don't think he's got any sort of superpowers. He's not alone, Hikaru murmured before sniffing the air. There are others with him. Sure enough, when I peered out again, there were two figures also scrounging around in my living room. One was a large, dark-skinned being whose hair was woven tightly into a very long braid with a barbed metal hook on the end. The other was a frail, reptilian-like creature covered in spines, with a corrosive drool dripping from its forked tongue. Closing the door again, I frowned. I don't recognize either of them. The reptile is El Chupacabra, the goat sucker. The other one is Mahuru. Watch out for his scourge-like whip. Let me guess, they're also looking for the key? It nodded its head to signal I was correct. Silently extending my arm, I gestured for Sam to hand me the knife. What are you going to do? I gripped the blade tightly and leaned against the door. You're going to stay low. I'll run out and distract them while you and Hikaru. A loud crash rang out from the living room, interrupting me mid-sentence. Opening the door once more, there was the strange woman from the warehouse. Her eyes narrowed on the three of them. Come now, boys, throwing yourself a party and you didn't invite me. The three of them ceased their searching to turn on her. Sasquatch clenched his fist, causing his knuckles to crack menacingly. Slick back, he bellowed, his eyes full of disdain. The woman slid her foot back to prepare for a fight as the three circled around her. You should not have come here, the one that Hikaru identified as Mahuru stated in a thick exotic accent. I fear you are outnumbered. Quality over quantity, my dearies, she retorted. Her eyes locked on Bigfoot, declaring him her first target. She sprung towards him with a karate-like kick. I'd expected her to send him flying, but he took this kick square to the chest with ease. With her momentum gone, he gripped her ankle and threw her like a rag doll into my TV. The glass shattered, raining down around her as she slumped onto the ground. With a bit of effort, she rose back to her feet. Still, there was no way she could win this fight against all three of them. This was no time for me to hesitate anymore. If I didn't do something now, they were going to kill her. I dashed down the hall before Sam or Hikaru could stop me. Just as Bigfoot went to punch her again, I tackled the woman out of the way. His arm went straight through the TV and into the drywall behind it, temporarily trapping him there. Oh, hello, she greeted me with a smile. You're a sight for sore eyes. Glad you're still breathing. Right now, I'm more worried about you. I'll hold them off. You run while you can. That's sweet of you, but you're out of your league, Ishmael. Step back and let me handle this. Chupacabra made a run for the two of us. I responded with a quick slice across his chest that had him spitting curses through his pointed teeth. With that, the fight was on. Mahuru raised his whip, but Sam had no intentions of standing idly either. He turned to see her at the last second. She connected a punch to his stomach, carrying the weight of her entire body behind her. I'd seen Sam have to get rough with a handsy guy or two before in high school, enough to know that she could bring the hurt if she wanted to. The dark-skinned man staggered, allowing her to follow up with a double-fisted blow over his head. He fell to his knees while the woman beside me gave a cheer. Whoa! Way to go, Red! Sam smirked, tossing her hair over her shoulders. I do a little kickboxing at the Y every now and then. Ishmael, I've got Rapunzel. Weird girl? I'll take Scaly, she declared, easily zooming past me to engage the goat sucker. My eyes went to the large ape man just as he ripped his arm from the plaster. He turned on me, furious that I'd intervened in his kill. I could feel my heart pounding as I gripped my knife tighter. Great, I would get the hard one. Since he wasn't exactly quick, speed would have to be my strategy. Every time he threw a punch, I dipped out of the way until I found my back against the wall. When he left an opening, I stabbed him with the knife, but it barely sank into his chest. His skin was just too thick. Worse, it pissed him off. His hand clamped around my wrist, easily lifting me in the air. With his other hand, he plucked out the small blade and tossed it behind him as if it were a toothpick. His grip tightened down, and the cracking sound of my bone accompanied an intense pain. The fractured wrist became my second priority when he pulled back his fist. I shut my eyes tight, begging that my skull wouldn't get the same treatment my arm did. But the punch never came. Instead, I was dropped to the ground. When I opened my eyes again, I saw him staring at his own hand in shock as it moved closer. He started choking himself, and when his pupils rolled back into his head, he crashed to the ground like a tree in a forest. The recently befriended yokai emerged from the cut on his chest like a specter. The moment the tiny fox regained solidity, it cringed in disgust. Ew, 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 he grew, whined. It's so gross in there. Good work, I gasped, nursing my arm. Ishmael, some assistance, please, Sam squealed as she continued to narrowly avoid Mahuru's strange movements. They were like a dance with the way that he twisted and turned, but each movement brought with it a vicious lash from his whip-like hair. In the middle of one of his swings, he stomped on his braid, and with the angle changed, the weighted hook sailed above the redhead. Unfortunately, she mistook that to mean she'd avoided his attack. He tugged on his hair, setting the hook in her shoulder and wrenching her to the floor. Placing his foot on her back, he freed the hook before turning on me. With my injured wrist and now unarmed, I doubted I could fare better than her. Either way, though, I had to try to help her. Can you possess him? I asked Hikaru as the dark-skinned man advanced on me. Not without an open wound, she squeaked. I'll see what I can do. Mahuru swung his hook towards me, but I had no intention of falling for the trick he used on Sam. When it went past me, I used my good arm to grab his ponytail and wrap it around my wrist. With it strung tight between us, I'd incapacitated him. Or so I thought. The smug look on his face alerted me to my mistake. He whipped his head back, ripping me off my feet. With nothing to brace myself on, he flung me through the air and slammed me down on top of my friend. Meanwhile, the woman was easily holding her own against Chupacabra. He was already badly beaten from her rapid kicks. Blood was oozing from his face and bruises had formed all over his body. Hearing the loud impact that I had made, she kicked the reptile hard, sending him into Mahuru. Instead of her following up the attack, though, she fled in the opposite direction. Our foes detangled themselves, and even Bigfoot was able to get back to his feet. Damn, this was the end. Before they could decide which of us to go after, she jerked open my faucet, sending water rushing out of the spigot. There was no chance she'd be able to stop these three the way she'd stopped the hellhound. Then something strange happened. With a flick of her wrist, the water moved horizontally, forming a thin wall between us and our attackers. It bubbled furiously, and I could feel the heat from the boiling liquid. Stay down, she ordered, pouncing on top of Sam and I. No, she's going to. Mahuru wasn't even able to finish his sentence as the wall exploded into a massive cloud of steam. The entire room's visibility went from crystal clear to nothing at all within the blink of an eye. Come on, she whispered, helping me to my feet. Let's go. I could hear the monsters coughing in the steam. The sound of rushing water also helped to mask our footsteps. I managed to grab Sam's hand, forming a human chain as the woman dragged us out. As steam billowed out of the apartment, Chuck let out a sigh of disappointment. I thought you said your boys could handle this, Jack. Across from him, in the back of the dark limousine, a set of pearly whites flashed in the shadows. I thought you said the same thing, Chucky. Who do you think the boss will be more pissed at? The screw-up, or the one who's supposed to watch the screw-up? The sarcastic laugh with which he punctuated his sentence made Chuck scowl. He always hated working with the creature. He was more human than any of the other cryptids, and truth told, no one even really knew where he came from. He'd just shown up in Victorian London, bouncing around like some lunatic, frightening women and slicing throats. Was a time the world knew him as Spring-Heeled Jack. Now it was just Jack. I am not at fault for the incompetence of your underlings, Chuck quipped in his Irish brogue. Whatever the case, the slickback seems to be becoming more and more of an issue. You must heal the wound. First, we must remove the thorn. I'll fetch the pliers, Jack cackled as the limo pulled away from the curb. Just as Chuck was about to offer a retort about Jack's tool shed and the sharpness of the tools within it, his phone lit up. As the rather irritating sound of "How much is that doggy?" began to jingle out within the small space, he gave another heavy sigh. He detested the song. The only reason he hadn't changed it, or the background on his phone of an adorable puppy, was because his boss would kill him where he stood if he even thought about it. Pushing the button to answer it, he held the receiver to his ear. "This is Chuck," he stated. "Good to hear from you," the voice on the other end commented. "Tell me, is the key in your possession?" "Not as of yet," he answered through gritted teeth. "A certain bumbling fool allowed it to slip through his fingers." "You know I don't enjoy it when you talk in the third person, Chuck. What of Jack? Has he managed to clean up your mess?" Chuck's grip tightened on his phone for a moment. He contemplated crushing it in his grasp before he thought better of it. "No," he grumbled, "he did not." "As was expected," the voice commented. "You two fools cannot accomplish anything asked of you. Why do I even bother?" "I hesitate to remind you." "Then don't," his boss snapped coldly. "I care not for recognitions long past. Right now, the future and present are far more important. And if you can't get your act together, then I will have no choice but to put you both on permanent reassignment in Atlantis." A shiver ran up Chuck's spine, causing the smile that Jack wore to suddenly fade. "What did the boss say?" he asked. "What are your orders?" Chuck requested over the phone. There was a slight delay before the voice mused. Perhaps I'll send you to Atlantis anyway. Prepare for travel. You leave at the end of next month. Once the seals are released, we'll need the Deepbringers Alliance to handle the Skyrakers." "Wait, but—" "That is all. Bon voyage, mutt." With a click, the phone cut off. The leader of the Hellhounds gave a howl of rage before hurling the device straight at Jack. "You damned fool! This is all your fault! We've been stationed in Atlantis! God damn Atlantis!" "No," Jack muttered in shock. No, not Atlantis! Damn it, I'm too pretty for Atlantis! Isn't there some way to change the boss's mind? There has to be!" "I'm thinking," he muttered. "Think faster!" Chuck tuned out his companion's complaining as he considered his options. He could attempt to run, but he'd seen others try it in the past, and he had little doubt that Jack would turn on him in an instant to save his own hide. If running didn't work, he could possibly go to the Skyrakers and beg to be taken in, but odds are they wouldn't grant him asylum. They'd simply kill him, worst case, or best case they'd lock him away for good. Locked away was arguably a better option than what awaited him in Atlantis, but he would certainly prefer freedom to being locked in a cage. "We proceed as planned," he finally stated. "What?" "We find the key. If we bring the boss the key, we'll be forgiven for past crimes, and thus we'll be back in good graces." "So if we find the key, it'll get us out of the doghouse?" The Ripper smirked, giving his signature chuckle. Chuck let out a long breath. "Just shut up, Jack." "Well, I'll send the forces out," he grumbled, upset that his humor was not appreciated. Rolling down the window, he poked out his head. "Hey, dimwits!" he shouted. Mahuru, Sasquatch, and Chupacabra all emerged from the apartment, coughing and wheezing on the thick cloud of steam that had engulfed them. All were coated with a few burns here and there, but were mostly unharmed. "Christ! Sasquatch, Chupa, put on your damn glamour, Jesus!" As the two of them began to shift and morph, they soon looked like average humans. "Ugh, I hate this skin," Chupacabra hissed. "People just give me glares and mutter under their breath." "It's because you picked a skin that makes you look like trouble," Mahuru noted, tapping on one of the goatsucker's many gang-like tattoos. "Seriously, a skull and crossbones. That just screams socially acceptable." "Shut up, you morons," Jack snapped. "You already let the humans and Slickback get away. Now the boss has given me orders to ship the lot of you to Atlantis. Luckily, I'm feeling a little merciful, so I'm sticking my neck out to give you one last chance. If you manage to track them down and finish the job you started, Maybe I can persuade the boss to be a bit more lenient. Yes, sir, they all replied in unison and saluted. Immediately they returned into the house to continue investigating where their prey could have gone off. Excuse me. Instead, they returned into the house to continue investigating where their prey could have gone as Jack rolled up the window again. Deceitful, Chuck noted. What? You don't use a bit of fear-mongering to keep your mutts in check, Chucky? Jack cackled. We both know that's not true. I've heard quite a few horror stories from your boys down at the pub. Oh, I do terrify them into obedience. The only difference between us is when they fail, I actually follow through. Chuck's one eye swiveled to glare at his rival coworker as if daring him to make another comment. When he didn't, Chuck simply nodded his head, turning back to look out the window. Something about this slickback bothers me. I think we should perform a hunt of our own to find out where it is she came from. Whatever floats your boat, Jack grumbled. When we finally stopped running, Sam and I nearly collapsed from exhaustion. The girl was so fast. She could just keep running forever. As if to accent the fact, she threw her arms into the air. Whoa, what a rush! That was amazing! She cried, flashing us a big grin, before noticing that both of our expressions were not the same as hers. Are you two already winded? Yes, we both answered. Right, she sighed. You're human. My mistake. Human, I repeated. So then you're... Levia, she beamed, offering her hand. Nice to meet you, I responded with a polite shake. So, not to sound ungrateful for you saving our lives again, but who exactly are you? I just told you, I'm Levia. Sam gave a huff, folding her arms over her chest. I could understand her impatience. Even still, she did save our lives, and for that reason alone, I didn't press the issue. Okay, so what now? I questioned. She waved towards the door of a rundown apartment. We go inside. This is my place. We'll be safe here. That's what you said about Ishmael's apartment, Sam chided. We found an intruder the moment we went inside. I'm not so certain you can discern dangerous from safe. Levia looked at her with the same fury she had in the warehouse. Recalling the way she'd dispatched each of our enemies thus far, I stepped between the two in case I had to intervene. Savior or not, I couldn't let Sammy take a blow for saying what we were both thinking. The moment my gaze met our new acquaintance's, she relaxed. A deep breath went through her lungs before she offered an apologetic grin. Yes, so I may have been a bit off. I didn't expect Behemoth to send others after you. This time, though, I swear, no one is going to bother us here. Staring straight at me, she added, Have I ever let harm come to you before, Ishmael? Ooh, you saved him twice. That's definitely a good sample size, Sammy retorted. Thrice, actually, she quipped. And how many times have you saved his life, Red? Sam. My name is Sam. Sammy, we don't exactly have other options at this point. Levia makes a fair point. She saved us from the Hellhound and from the others. It's safer with her than by ourselves. My best friend glared at me as if I'd just sold her up the river. Fine, she muttered. With that, she followed us up the stairs, but I could still feel the look of irritated disdain glued to our host. Chapter 5. Right then, Levia began as we entered the room. Let's go over the basics. Chuck, myself, and the others are all cryptids. Secondly, you have just stepped into the middle of a huge war. Thirdly, you cannot trust anyone. With me so far? Sam just brushed right past her, not even stopping to listen. I'm going to take a long shower, followed by an equally long nap. Cows are in the... There was a loud thud as Sam slammed the door to one of the side rooms shut beside her. Cabinet, Levia finished before turning back to me. Well, looks like it's just the three of us now, handsome. Handsome? I brushed the less important thought out of my mind, choosing instead to focus on her basics. Sorry, Levia, you'll have to start from the beginning for me. I recognize the term cryptids, but what gives? Do they all just decide to start popping up suddenly? You're a cryptid? What kind? What does any of this have to do with me? I've been searching for cryptids my entire life, and now... She placed a hand over my mouth to silence me. Relax, she instructed. Take some deep breaths. I know all of this is new and scary, but I'm here, so you're safe. When I nodded my head, she pulled her hand away with a slight smile. We cryptids try not to show ourselves to humans. Not on purpose, anyway. I guess you could say you're a special exception. Probably more excitement than you wanted, huh? I sank into one of the wooden chairs scattered around the apartment. I could hardly believe it. I was in the home of a mythical creature, and the place was a total dump. No art or decorations, even the furniture looked as if it had been pulled out of a dumpster. Hi, Momo. Did you want to come say hi to the camera? Oh, come say hi. Sorry to interrupt everybody. This is my fluffy little dragon, Momo. She likes to come interrupt sometimes. There you go, girl. No, don't be mad at me. There you go. I do need you not to stand in front of the computer, though, because then I can't read. Oh, there you go. Go ahead. All right, she's going to lay down here next to me. There you go. Is this how you've always lived? I asked, trying my best to stay polite. Yeah, it's not glamorous, she admitted. You have to cut me some slack, though. I've only been on my feet for a few days. Hikaru climbed up my pants leg to curl up in my lap with a happy purr. I'm still surprised to see you, Levia. I was almost certain you were dead, it said. Oh, right, that reminds me. Levia grabbed the squealing fox creature by the scruff of the neck, opened the window to her apartment, and tossed it out into the trash 2 stories below. Upon seeing my look of shock, she gave me a dismissive wave. Oh, relax. That little beast had it coming after what happened between us last time. It's fine. Last time? What last time? This is all insane. I'm not convinced that you're sane. Levia seemed hurt by my comment. That's rather cruel of you to say, especially after I've saved you 3 times now. Yeah, you mentioned that before. You saved me at the warehouse and at my house. What's the third? Still haven't figured it out? Moving closer to me, she ran her finger to tickle me beneath my chin. Humans are so cute when they're clueless. I also saved you at the pier, remember? I really haven't had much of a chance to thank you for getting me out of that predicament. I furrowed my brow in thought, trying to remember seeing her at the pier when it collapsed. She waited patiently, but it all just seemed like a blur. Why would you thank me for you coming to my rescue? I questioned out loud, more to myself than to her. The answer was obvious, of course. I did something to help her. In my mind's eye, I was out there in the stormy sea again. Luska was laughing as he toyed with me in the water. Through the waves, I saw the flash of lightning. There was a woman. No, wait. Another flash of lightning as I reached the surface, grabbing onto the wooden carousel horse. As it turned over, I looked into its lifelike seafoam green eyes. Thunder rumbled as another purple flash blinded me. When it faded, there I was, back in Levia's apartment, staring into her smiling face, complete with her deep blue-green irises. You're the horse, I realized. Very good, she beamed. Just before there was a scratching at the door, signaling that Hikaru had returned. Ignoring it, she rested her palm on my cheek. I was trapped in that wooden statue, but you freed me. Now I'm yours to use however you see fit. Use? I stammered shyly. I don't want to use you. She pulled her hand away, perplexed by my response. You don't? Well, I want your help, but I don't want to use you. You're not a slave or anything. If you don't want to help me, I'm not going to force you, I guess is what I mean. Now I was blushing from the implications of it all. She smiled again, walking around me to gently rub my shoulders. That's nice of you, Ishmael. I will help you. But to do that, we should start from the beginning. The very beginning. You know the story. First there was only darkness, then for the first time ever God spoke, "Light!" and there was light. I blinked for a moment, resting my hand on hers to stop her. Please don't tell me this is some ruse to get me to join a church or something. The universe was really created in a week. She chuckled and shook her head. No, of course not. Such a notion is a construct from when your Bible was translated from its original text. See, the ancient Hebrew word for day meant an indefinite amount of time. An era, if you will. God created the world in 6 eras. On the first, he created existence. On the second, he created the sky and water, separating the water on earth from the sea of outer space with the heavens in between. On the third, he created land and plants, the most ancient of life. And on the 4th he created the sun and the moon, and filled the night sky with stars so as to mark the times and seasons past. Right, right. 5th day he made animals, 6th day he made humans, 7th he rested. I get the gist, but what does that have to do with anything? Levia leaned closer to rest her chin on my shoulder. Her voice was a husky purr in my ear. That 5th day, God didn't create animals, Ishmael. He created the first caretakers of the world. He created cryptids. As she walked back to stand in front of me, my mouth was agape in shock. The 5th day was, by far, the longest. It lasted nearly 3 billion years, and during that time he created us. We were disorganized, at first. Much like you humans do, we questioned our existence and its purpose. At the time, God still walked the earth, so he had little trouble explaining to us how it is we came to be. That was eons beyond my time, mind you, but the story has more or less been branded into our minds. God created the Trine, 3 incredible, powerful cryptids, to rule over the others and bring organization and harmony to the world. At first, it worked. I scratched my head and thought for a moment. Did their existence become lost or something? I don't know of any all-powerful cryptids. Oh, they're not all-powerful. They're just very close. And you do know their names, or at least you know 2 of their names, more likely. God created one for each area of the earth. For the land, he created Behemoth. For the sea, Leviathan. Finally, for the heavens, he made Ziz. The 3 originally were close friends, working together to make the world a more beautiful place, until one day something happened that surprised everyone. What happened? I asked, completely engrossed in her story. Life changed. Animals that were once bound to water were suddenly able to walk and breathe the air. Creatures that were meant to be trapped on the land were able to glide through trees. Birds soon began diving into the depths of the ocean to gather food and sustenance. Things evolved, and when the groups began to mix, there was a heated argument over which of the 3 should be the one to rule which cryptids. The argument then came to blows, and the fight became so cataclysmic that it would have destroyed the earth for good, had God not intervened. In his wrath, he turned many of the cryptids into mindless beasts, and sealed away the Trine for good. The cryptids who hid were separated by a thick animosity. Thus began the 6th era. This time he shaped creation and granted a piece of himself to it. From the earth itself he formed humans, and he placed them as the new rulers of the earth. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Not only did God truly exist, not only was Genesis true, but cryptids did exist. They were real, and the proof was standing before me. The weight of it all began to sink in as I tried to wrap my mind around it all. What did the ones who escaped do? They couldn't have been happy. Not at all, she admitted. For a long time, the creatures let humans grow and develop. Humans began to hunt cryptids and beasts for food. Most of them were unwilling to risk God's wrath again, so they went into hiding. Others were eventually slain outright. Soon, however, a man was born that would change everything. His name was Job. I know that name. Indeed, he has his own book in the Bible. Rather, he was the first book written for the Bible. At this point, the seals had weakened. The Trine had not just been watching the earth, but learning the entire time. Turns out that because humans had a small amount of divine spark in them, when they died near the seals, that divine energy would weaken them further. In an instant, armies began to rally for battle. This was around the time I was born. I naturally sided with my mother, who gave me my name. It was a piece of her name. My eyes widened to the size of dinner plates. You're the daughter of Leviathan? I mouthed hoarsely. Levia nodded. It didn't take me long to rebel against my mother. She was always arguably been the cruelest of the 3. Her seal was the first to break, and she obtained that freedom by slaughtering every member of Job's family that her followers could. Job begged God for help, so God thrust upon Job a great responsibility. He would be the one to reseal the Trine, and ensure that humans were safe once again by hiding the seals. But Job was not alone. He was accompanied by me, at my mother's request. Your mother? I repeated, confused. Why would your mother help Job seal the Trine away? What better way to get her enemies off the table? Together we forced Behemoth back into his seal, Ziz too. When I saw the amount of faith Job had in God, something inside me just clicked. When we went to the island of Atlantis, I turned to my mother and helped Job seal her away. Just as the fight ended, she cursed me, sealing me into that horse. From then, I watched as time passed by me until eventually I came to the pier, as you know. And well, here I am. Wow, I muttered in awe. That's some story. It's all so hard to believe. Hell, I'd think it was a work of fantasy if not that I'd seen it with my own eyes. But what does this have to do with me? Levia bit her lip as if she were unsure if she wanted to answer my question. Finally, she grabbed a chair and sat it across from me. Reaching out, she took my hands in hers, clutching them together. Ishmael, since the day Job resealed the shrine, cryptids have continued trying to free their masters. There are a very rare few, like me, who are either dedicated to God or choose to stay out of it, but most are very dangerous. Every descendant of Job has the power to reseal the shrine, and if killed, will open their seals. And you, Ishmael Job, are one of his descendants. You are the literal key to their cells, and that's why they are looking for you. The only thing is, the fools are lost in translation, and thus don't realize that you are the key. Me? Yes. The target on my back felt even heavier than before. This burden came with the epiphany that I could never stop running. My chest began to rise and fall rapidly. I was struggling to breathe. What was happening to me? Ishmael, take deep breaths. Just relax. You're going to be okay, I promise. I'm here to help you, remember? I'm going to keep you alive and safe from the shrine. When I managed to calm down, I nodded. So, now what? I asked. Where do we go from here? They'll find me eventually. You said so yourself. Once a hellhound gets your scent, they don't lose it again. Chuck has my scent. He'll be here any moment. Let me worry about that. He'll find us, but it will take some time. Her assurance didn't help much. I still felt queasy. Listen, I have something that will help, but right now, you and your girlfriend and the little rodent outside, we all need to rest. Girlfriend? You mean Sam? I didn't even have to correct her. Still, she seemed pleased to learn that the two of us weren't an item. Instead, she pat my knee and stood with a stretch. Anyway, I'm going to get ready for bed. I'm afraid there's only mine and Sam's, so you'll have to share with someone. Just a word of advice, let's keep our discussion between the two of us, okay? There's no need worrying anyone else about you being the key, just keep it solely need to know. I nodded in agreement, watching as she stood, and after another reassuring pat on my hands, vanished into the other room off to the side of the living room. Walking over to the front door, I opened it, allowing the shivering Hikaru to saunter in from outside. Its fur was sopping wet from the rain, and it quickly shook itself to get the icy moisture off of its body before rolling around on the carpet in an attempt to dry itself off. That was so mean, it complained cutely. Why would Levia do that to me? She says it's for the last time, whatever that means, I offered, reaching down to scratch it between the ears. It surrendered itself to my touch, and as I stroked it, I began to think about what to do. Could I really just go to bed? Somehow I doubted it. I was far too awake now. Anyway, you should get some sleep, I suggested to Hikaru. You can stay in Sam's room for now. I'd really appreciate you watching over her with all that's going on. What about you, Master? Ishmael, I corrected. I'm going to do some research. If I get tired, I'll use some spare sheets to make a futon or something to sleep on. Hikaru nodded in understanding, padding into Sam's room to curl up and sleep. I, however, had a much more important question on my mind. Who was it I could trust, and who was it that I couldn't? Pulling out my phone, I cautiously looked towards Levia's room where I could hear her dozing peacefully. It hadn't escaped my notice that she still hadn't quite revealed what manner of cryptid she was. Opening up a database on cryptids, the same I'd used to identify Luska, I began putting in what I knew about Levia. Scottish accent, possibly Gaelic. Sea cryptid, can shapeshift into a horse, immensely powerful. I thought about it for a moment or two more, her mesmerizing eyes still in the forefront of my mind. Shaking my head, I resolved to add beautiful to the list. Almost immediately, a single result came back. Kelpie? I muttered to myself. That was a strange one I hadn't heard of before. Selecting the link, I began to read with great interest. The Kelpie, or Yak whiskey, is a sea cryptid from Scottish folklore, not unlike the sirens of Greek mythology. Taking residence in flowing lochs and rivers, the kelpie will often disguise itself as a beautiful woman or a large black horse. Charming and sweet, the kelpie lures in its prey. I paused, looking up from my phone in fear and waiting to confirm that Levia was indeed asleep. I had to admit the description fit a lot of her traits. She was charming, flirtatious, beautiful, not to mention all of the other ineffable qualities, such as her accent and ability to turn into a horse. But how did one identify a kelpie in human form? Scanning further down, I finally came to a passage that I found helpful. Kelpies are known for their slyness. While they primarily target children, there are plenty of stories of them luring men in with their beautiful human forms. The easiest way to identify a kelpie, be it in human or animal form, is its hair or mane. There, the kelpie has an appendage that resembles a single strand of seaweed woven between the hairs. But beware, for a kelpie can trap its victims with adhesive skin when touched. If captured, grabbing the horse's bridle will allow one to gain control of the beast. That meant there was only one course of action left for me. Creeping to her door, I slowly poked my head in to see her asleep in her bed. The simple mattress and box spring didn't have a frame, but it was obvious she did her best to make it look nice. What am I doing? I thought to myself. She's the one who told me what's going on, so why am I so suspicious? I knew the answer to that, of course. She seemed way too interested in me personally for it to not raise alarms. Hi, Momo, welcome back. Moving to her side, I slipped beneath the covers beside her. With her back to me, I had a prime opportunity to check her. Reaching up, I gently brushed aside her dark black hair before taking a sharp breath. There, attached to the back of her neck, was a single red piece of seaweed. Levia groaned, stirring slightly before I quickly pulled my hands away. Turning over to look at me, her eyes met mine. Hey, handsome. Find anything interesting? My heart raced in panic as I tried to come up with an answer. Nope, sorry. I was just getting a piece of lint out of your hair. She smiled slightly and snuggled close to me. That's not what I meant. I overheard you tell Hikaru that you were going to do some research. I was curious if you found anything that could help restore the seals. Sorry, the answer is still no. Oh well, perhaps we'll have more luck in the morning. Leaning up, she placed a soft kiss on my nose. Sleep well, Ishmael. Sweet dreams. Judging by my past experiences dreaming about the horse, somehow I doubted I'd be getting sleep at all. Chapter 6. Nearly an hour had passed before I worked up the courage to slip out of Levia's arms and return to her den. After searching through the bare cabinets and finding no coffee, I leaned up against the counter with a sigh. Can't sleep? When I looked up, I saw Sam standing in front of her room. Yeah, I admitted. You? It's a little hard when your entire world is flipped upside down, she teased, coming to stand by me. With a sway, she nudged my hips with hers. So, what's wrong with you? I figured this would be like a dream come true for you. Now you can tell the whole world I told you so, and you'd be right for it. It's a bit different when you're running from your life from them. I'll be honest, Sammy, I'm glad you're here because I don't think I could do this without you. I flashed her an awkward grin. I guess that's how it always is for us, isn't it? I need you to keep me afloat, and all I do is get you into trouble. She rolled her eyes, returning my grin. If I thought you were a burden on my life, I'd have cut you loose a long time ago. I mean, I'm not a fan of your recent company, she noted, looking towards Levia's door. But even still, I trust you. I know you'd never steer me wrong, you know? To be honest, I need you to keep me afloat, too. Yeah, right, I scoffed. Sam, you're the sort of girl who could have anything she wanted. All it would take is a smile and a wave, and suddenly the world would throw itself at your feet. Think of how many boyfriends you've had, and think of how many girlfriends I've had. People love you. I'm just the weird guy along for the ride. Not everything, she murmured. Based on her sad tone, my mind immediately went to her parents. Oh, God, Sam, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean that your parents... I mean... She looked at me in surprise. You don't have to apologize, Ishmael. I was thinking about something else. Let's change subjects. What's our next step? Good question, I answered. Levia says she has something that can help us. She plans on showing us tomorrow. If we can cover our tracks, we'll be able to lay low for a while. Maybe go to Dad's cabin. If we lay low for a bit, we can plan better. If we lay low for a bit, we can better plan our strategy. What about the key? She questioned. Everyone seems to be looking for this thing. Seems odd that Livia isn't too concerned. You think she knows something? She does. She filled me in on some things while you were sleeping. Well, come on, let me have 'em. It'd be nice to be able to make heads and tails of this monster. Does she have the key? Sort of. What are we waiting for then? Let's grab it and go. The faster we hide with it, the less likely those creeps are to find it. You don't have to worry about that. They're never going to find it. There is no key. I told her. It wasn't just Levia's advice that kept me quiet. The last thing I wanted was to worry Sam. Well, they seem to think there is, she countered. That's enough for them to want to kill us over it. Well, there isn't. There has to be. It doesn't make any sense that there isn't one. There is no key. Well, then what the hell do they want with us, Ishmael? If there's no key, why do they think we have it? I didn't respond. My eyes fell from hers, now pointed at my feet. You know, she whispered. You know the reason, don't you? Yes. Why won't you tell me? She chastised. We're supposed to be best friends. Friends don't hide things from each other. I'm sorry, I apologized, but Levia told me not to tell. Of course she did. It's obvious she doesn't like me. If I hadn't been with you, she'd have probably let me get eaten by that hellhound. Come on, Sam, I tried. No, you come on. Before she showed up, you and I told each other everything. Now you're keeping secrets from me? How could you, Ishmael? Okay, I surrendered. Look, there isn't a key, okay? It's me they're after. I'm the key. If they kill me, it'll release the worst monsters known to man. Sam fell silent. Now that the truth was out, the guilt came right behind it. I'm so sorry, Sam. I didn't want you dragged into this mess. I thought it would be safer if you didn't know. You're the key? She repeated in shock. Yes, I'm the key they're looking for. Why? She muttered. Why does it have to be you? It couldn't be some stupid family heirloom. It had to be you. Why? Sam, I know you're scared, but it'll be fine. Levia will help protect us. Hikaru too. Tomorrow, when we get whatever secret weapon Levia has, we'll take the fight to them and stop the monsters from coming back. I tried to give her a reassuring hug, but she squirmed out of my embrace. I'm really sorry, she murmured. I could hear her sniffle as she wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I wish it was anyone else. Really, I do. Sam, what are you talking about? She turned back to face me, her honey-colored eyes seeming to glow in the darkness. Sammy, I repeated. She began to walk towards me. Her arms ignited in scintillating flames that flickered with various colors. My eyes went wide. You? I gasped, stumbling back. You're one of them? Goodbye, Ishmael, she whispered. The fire rolled into her palm, forming into a ball. I barely had time to roll out of the way before she threw it as hard as she could at me. The place where it hit was nothing but a steaming hole in the drywall. Please don't make this any harder than it has to be, she pleaded, throwing more fiery orbs at me like a lethal game of dodgeball. Why are you doing this? I demanded, toppling over the small table to take cover from the heat. We're friends, remember? You said so yourself. Was this really Sam? Had some monster taken her place while we slept? You don't understand, Ishmael. You don't know what it's like finding out that your real mother's been imprisoned for over 1,000 years, even though she didn't do anything wrong. Every statement was filled with hurt and finalized with a jarring blast against the table. Shut your gaggle, Levia commanded, racing in and blasting Sam with a face full of water from the adjacent bathroom. Ishmael, hide in the bedroom. Did you seriously just hit me with toilet water? Sam roared at her, steam starting to roll off her body in a rage. It's better than you deserve, the Kelpie countered, her accent becoming thicker. I warned you what would happen if you didn't listen, Red. I'm going to scalp your gob till you look like you've been winching with a lawnmower. You and your stupid accent stay out of this, Sam shot back, racing towards her to lash out with a fiery punch. Levia was faster, though, weaving between her strikes like a well-trained boxer. Each missed blow made Sam even angrier, and she began to lose her concentration. When her guard was lowered, Levia took full advantage. Her foot whipped out in a blur, catching Sam straight in the chin. The blow was so loud I was certain she'd just snapped her neck. Oh God, did you just kill her? I screamed. To my shock, Sammy began to stir. Placing her hands on the floor, she rose to her feet. You bitch, she growled. I swear I will roast you to hell and back. The boards beneath her began to smoke from the immense heat that was pouring from her body. I'd like to see you try. the horse huffed. She stomped her foot through the boards, straight through a pipe below. Water gushed forth from the mane, exploding outwards in a tidal wave over Sam. Not having expected it, the fire on her body was extinguished in an instant, but Levia wasn't done there. The liquid formed around Sam's head in a ball, and I realized what the plan was. "No, stop!" I pleaded. My once best friend began to claw at it in shock, struggling to breathe as the Kelpie patiently waited for her to run out of air. "You're a right bastard, Red. I'm going to make certain you can never betray us again." "Stop it!" I shouted, running to Levia and grabbing on her arm. Her concentration broken, the water splashed to the ground around Sam, who began coughing up what she'd inhaled. "Don't hurt her, please." "Are you out of your mind?" she protested, just before the sound of broken glass drew our attention to the window. Sammy had taken a running leap through it. My heart plummeted as I rushed to the windowsill. Just as I got there, an enormous bird took off towards the clouds, leaving a burning light in its wake. Though my hands were getting cut by the broken shards of glass, I hardly noticed. My best friend was a cryptid. Worse, she was gone, and there was nothing I could do to bring her back. I began to sob as I stared up at the clouds. The person I cared about most in my life had just become my enemy. Levia said nothing at first, just watching me for a few minutes. When she couldn't any more, she walked over to me and tenderly pulled my hands from the glass. "Come on," she whispered. "Let's clean you up, okay?" I pulled my wrist from her grip. "You didn't have to do that," I growled. "You didn't have to try to kill her." "She was trying to kill you. I had to protect you." "Sammy wouldn't have killed me," I argued. "She's my best friend. She would never do that to me. Never." "Ishmael, I know what you are," I declared loudly, pulling away from her. "You're a Kelpie. You're a monster. You kidnap innocent children and you drown them so you can eat them. And now you're trying to charm me into being your little pet, but it's not going to happen." Levia visibly sank as her face took on an expression of hurt. "No, I swear, I'd never do that to you." My anger and my sorrow were mixing into a toxic combination, and she could see it coming from a mile away. "I'm sorry about your friend. I know you're upset and scared, but I promise that I'm your friend too." "Did you know?" I asked. "About her?" "Yes." "Why didn't you say something sooner?" Levia bit her lip. "I needed you to trust me. If I'd told you she was a cryptid and was hiding it from you the whole time, would you have trusted me?" I took a deep breath. I hated to admit it, but she was right. "Probably not. But how can I trust anyone? My best friend just stabbed me in the back. All I can think of is how we spent our whole lives together. How could she betray me like this?" Outside the window, the trail was glowing dimly in the night. "I don't know," Levia answered, looking over her shoulder at it. "But right now, we've got bigger concerns. She just sent up a flare to every cryptid on the island. It's too dangerous now. We have to get you somewhere safe." I hated to leave. I was still reeling from it all, but Levia was right. "Right. Okay, let's go." The dark-haired young woman wrapped her arms around me. I was surprised by the sudden gesture, but I gladly accepted it. Honestly, a hug was just what I needed, but I still didn't return it. "I know this hasn't been easy for you," she told me, "but you have to trust me. It's the only way you'll be safe." Still, I stayed silent. For now, I trusted her, but only because of how many times she'd saved me thus far. "I know you were just trying to protect me, but I'm sorry. It's going to take me a bit to get used to all of this." Levia released me with a sigh. Her disappointment was written across her face, but she still tried to give me a smile. "I understand. Come on, let's get Hikaru and leave." When we looked in Sam's room, though, there was no trace of the small fox-like creature. "That's weird," I commented. "Where did Hikaru run off to? Sam didn't hurt it, do you think?" "I don't think so," she replied. "Honestly, this is for the best. I'd have had to ditch Hikaru anyway. What I'm showing you is top secret." I nodded to show I understood. The way she emphasized her words reminded me all too well the price for loose lips. If I hadn't blurted I was the key, Sam would still be around. This time I would make sure never to utter a secret she told me again. Once outside, Levia's body began to twitch and spasm. In the blink of an eye, her body had transformed into the horse that had saved me on the waves. She looked almost like a draft horse, save that she was slightly lower to the ground. Her entire body appeared to be soaking wet, Though when my hand brushed her cheek, it was dry and icy cold to the touch. Well, her voice rang in my head, are you going to climb on? She shook her head with a soft snort to demonstrate her impatience, but still I hesitated. I remembered what the article had said about kelpies. If I wasn't careful, she'd drag me under the water somewhere. I wouldn't even be able to stop her. Stop it, I commanded myself. She'd been nothing but upfront with me, excluding Sam. I may not have trusted her completely, but I knew I could count on her enough to not kill me. I'm not really sure where to grab you, I admitted, moving to place my hand on her mane. I don't want to pull your hair or anything, and you don't exactly have stirrups. She gave a slight snort before laying down flat on the ground so I could climb on her back. We'll make a horseman out of you yet, she teased as I clambered on top of her, my legs parted around her middle. I bit my tongue to inform her that I'd already ridden a horse many times in my life, and that she was simply a strange exception. Are you on? Comfortable? Yeah, but I still don't know where to hold on to. Before I could finish my statement, my legs were sucked against her side. It was like my pants had been sewn into her skin. A sticky film oozed out of her neck, even keeping my hand restrained to her. In an instant, she rocketed off at breakneck speed, wind rushing past my face in a horrible roar. Screaming wasn't even an option at the velocity we were going. If a bug had hit me, I was certain I'd lose an eye. Around us, the world became a blur as we rushed through streets and alleyways. Being nighttime, no one was on the streets, though I doubted they'd have seen anything anyway. Suddenly, she hit a complete 90-degree turn, twisting and running through a narrow alleyway without even slowing down a bit. For a moment, I thought I was going to pass out from the sheer force of the turn, but as she slowed, I regained my senses. Once she'd stopped, my body was released, and I collapsed from her back. I groaned as she returned to her human form, peering down at me with a chuckle. Don't worry, you'll get used to it. You still with me? What was that? I asked as she helped me get to my feet. How fast were we going? She pondered it for a moment. I've never really measured how fast I can run at full speed. I do know we were going faster than sound. What? I didn't hear a sonic boom. Well, duh, you don't hear a sonic boom if you're the one making it. Listen for yourself. Sure enough, when I craned my head, I could hear the sound of distant car alarms that had been set off. Holy crap, I muttered, you really are fast. If you think that's impressive, I can swim faster than I can run, she said with a wink before moving to the wall. Now come give me a hand. Okay, I agreed, moving to her side once I'd regained the ability to stand. Taking my hand, she placed it on a specific brick at the top before moving it carefully. I watched as she traced out a strange geometric pattern with my hand. For a moment, I just thought she was being crazy until at last she pressed my fingertips to one final block. The shape blazed to life on the stone. It looked like some sort of jumbled up biohazard symbol. 3 crescents like thorns that jutted outward and were woven together at the ends, and yet still symmetrical and deliberate. Okay, now I need you to repeat after me, she instructed, clearing her throat. Notum fac mihi viam. I looked to her and then to the wall. This was too freaky. Cryptids I could barely wrap my head around, and now there was also magic. Notum fac mihi viam? I had tried, and like that, a loud rumbling came from inside of the wall. The 3 thorns slid apart from one another, forming a large circle that we could walk through. Got it in one! Excellent. I was worried your Latin may not be up to snuff. I don't know Latin, I informed her as she stepped through the brick, looking around to see if anyone was waiting to jump out at me. Hello. Jump out and laugh at me for having fallen for some stupid joke. And seeing no one, I carefully followed her. Well, you could have fooled me. She grinned before extending her hand to her side and pulling a lever. With a whir, I could hear the sound of an old generator booting up and slowly lowering us downwards. We were in an elevator? Welcome, Ishmael, to one of the many branches of the Museum of Alexandria. As old light bulbs flickered to life, my eyes gazed in awe out across the hundreds of shelves and displays that resided under the earth. What is this place? I asked. Wasn't the Museum of Alexandria destroyed? Part of it was burned down, yes, the library specifically. Luckily, some of the works and artifacts were recovered. Herein, items of great significance are stored in an attempt to keep them from falling into the hands of the wicked. Stepping down the stairs, she turned with a bright smile, walking backwards through the shelves. Here, there is information on just about any subject you could ever imagine, even those questions you've always wanted answered but have never thought to ask. But specifically, she paused for a moment, reaching out to a shelf to draw out a thick book. You'll be using this. Moving to join her, I took the tome from my hand, running my fingers over its leather binding with bright-eyed curiosity. What is it? I asked, examining the strange five-pointed star on its cover. Is this a pentagram? Pentacle, she corrected. What? It's a pentacle, not a pentagram. A pentagram is a five-pointed star. A pentacle is a five-pointed star inside of a circle. There is a difference. This, she explained, tapping the symbol on the cover, is the Lesser Key of Solomon. The book is called the Lamegtin, and it will help you to harness your divine magic. I blinked in surprise. I can't do divine magic, I stated. Oh, really? She asked in mock surprise. Well, then I wonder what it was that caused the brick wall up there to just mosey on open. Maybe it was the wind. Don't be silly, Ishmael. All humans possess the divine spark that allows them to perform divine incantations. But you can't just flap your hands in the air and make nature kowtow to your whim, obviously. But isn't that what I just did outside? No, what you did outside was activate a glyph that was already placed there. You opened the door, you didn't make it. Anyways, I'm going to get you something that will allow you to use magic on your own. For now, study the Ars Notoria. I nodded, going to open the book, but she quickly slammed it shut. Do not, under any circumstances, read any part of the book out loud, understand? Only read the Ars Notoria, nothing else. Swallowing nervously, I nodded my head again to signal I understood. When she removed her hand from the book, I sighed to myself. When she disappeared between the shelves, I couldn't help but wonder just how much trouble I'd gotten myself into. Hikaru's eyes darted around after the two of us had left the apartment. Now that we were gone, it could deliver her report as she was supposed to. The Yako hadn't expected to be caught in the middle of its search, but even still it was clever enough to use the opportunity to its advantage. Creeping through the alleyways, it sat in an empty field and tilted its head back to release a low, solemn howl. After a few minutes of silence, Hikaru went to try again, but a voice quickly cut it off. No need, I'm here. What information do you have? You won't believe it, boss. Levia's alive, Hikaru squealed excitedly. More importantly, she knows where the key is. Then why are you here? The voice demanded from the shadows. If you know where the key is, why have you yet to fetch it and bring it to me? The diminutive fox-like creature's ears and tails drooped around it in disappointment. Hikaru had hoped for praise, not criticism. It'll be a bit more difficult than that. It's not an artifact like we had originally thought. Job didn't have the key. He was the key. It's his blood. The blood of his descendants will break the Master's seal. I see, the voice noted. That is an interesting development. I'll reflect on this and then give you further orders. Any other news you wish to bring to my attention? Hikaru nodded. Levia's been acting strange around the son of Job. She's trying to charm him, but it seems that Ishmael's immune to it. Like, her abilities don't work on him. Ziz has also already discovered that he is the key, but maybe Leviathan still doesn't. Leviathan is what tipped us off to him in the first place, the voice reminded its subordinate. The whole of the Trine will be on his trail now. We must ensure that the only one who manages to capture him is the host. Understand? Yes, ma'am, she squeaked. The figure leaned down, gently patting Hikaru's head with a sly grin. Here are your orders for now. Stick with the key. Protect him from any who may try to attack him, including our forces. I think I know a way to persuade him to come to our side. Yes, Princess, right away. With that, Hikaru scrambled off down the alleyway, following the scent trail left behind by Levia and the human. It would take a while, it was certain. The trail seemed to go on forever by the smell of it. Momo, why are you walking in circles only to lay down again, huh? Why are you being such a weirdo? Oh, don't get all bitey on me now, you fluffy little dragon. Ooh, ooh, ooh. You like the side scratches? You like the side scratches? Oh, okay. I'll stop playing with you, I'm sorry. The trail seemed to go on forever by the smell of it. The yokai would travel through the whole night if it had to, but it made sure to do as the princess instructed. All members of the host knew the punishment that awaited failure. Hikaru also knew that I'd rather die than experience it firsthand. Excuse me. Jeez, man, I am tired. Well, we'll do one more chapter and then call it for tonight. Chapter 7. Livia paused for a moment to peer around the bookshelf in order to ensure that I was still studying at the place she'd left me. Upon seeing me scouring the contents of the grimoire, she beamed before skipping towards a door with another pentacle on it. Carefully opening it, she slipped inside the dark chamber and closed the door behind her. "Hello," she called out meekly. With a flare of blinding icy blue light, a voice boomed forth. "You who have sought me out, remove your shoes, for you stand on holy ground." Levia reached down, untying the sneakers she'd grabbed from the clothing donation bin and placing them neatly beside the door. "Prepare for purification." Levia bowed her head and closed her eyes. She braced herself for what she knew was coming. A tendril of the light slowly moved forward, as if a limb reaching out. Fear gripped her, but she stayed still. She knew this was necessary, and had long ago surrendered herself to whatever was needed. With a sudden thrust, the light pierced through her chest, causing Levia to grit her teeth in pain. The holy fire filled her entire body, burning away the sin and darkness in her veins. It looked through all the bad she'd done last since she spoke with him, and purged it from her, washing her body clean through fire and light. As it pulled from her, she collapsed forward onto her hands, coughing violently. When she'd recovered, the voice spoke again, this time with a softer tone. "Hello, Levia. It's been some time." Now recollected, she sat back up on her knees and bowed her head. "It has," she agreed. "I have been locked away in that shell for a long time. If not that you had comforted me every now and again, I fear I would have lost my mind. Though you are free, I sense sorrow in you. What is the matter, my child?" Levia sniffed for a moment, wiping her eyes on the back of her hand. "It's the key," she explained. "When I first met him, he had a companion. She was a phoenix, and he didn't know. I kept it from him because I wanted him to trust me. Now I fear he hates me. The last thing I want is for this to be a repeat of last time." For a moment, he said nothing. "You misjudge him. I sense no disdain for you in his heart." "I don't understand." "Humans are not like cryptids, Levia. They do not just evolve physically, but on a spiritual level as well. They are as a flame, ever shifting and changing. Things are not as they once were. They are able to judge individuals and make their own decisions. It is a gift not all of them use, but you will find many differences between Ishmael and Job. What I foretold will still come to fruition. Have faith in him, my child, for I know he has faith in you." "He does?" Levia furrowed her brow, trying to understand. "How can he have faith in me? He has no idea of the things I've done." "Perhaps it is less what you've done, and more because of what you are doing." His words sank in for Levia as she stared at the floor. She knew he was right. He was always right. It was one of the things that swayed her so easily from her mother's side long, long ago. He told her that she'd be happy when she helped Job. She did, and yet she ended up locked away in a wooden prison and isolated. Certainly not happy. When he had first come to her in her prison, she had been furious. She accused him of lying to her and deceiving her into helping Job, and what had she gotten for it? She didn't get the happiness he'd promised her. For her help, all she'd received was torturous solitude, isolation from everything she once held dear. She thought he would leave, but he didn't. Instead, he told her once more. She would be called to action again, and when she did, she'd meet the man who would make her happy. A human. Despite the many years she'd been spent being examined by scientists, the first human she took notice of while imprisoned had been Ishmael. It had confused her greatly. There was little special about him, but still she couldn't help but to watch. She saw the way he treated people. The acts he performed left an impact on her, but she knew that they meant nothing in the long run for herself. She had suspected he was the key, but until Luska had grabbed him, she was never certain. From the moment when he'd grabbed her bridle and freed her, she felt a strong desire to keep him safe. Luska may have been big, but he wasn't nearly as strong as he looked. It was a little effort to send him crawling back to the deep. After that, she dropped him off on the shore and set about making preparations for her work. Everything was set to go until she realized that she had no idea how to find him again. She lucked out when he nearly hit her with his car. By doing so, she not only found him, but was able to save his life again from the hellhound. She felt as if he belonged to her, and she wouldn't let anyone take him away. Maybe, she murmured again. Father, if I may ask, are you the reason I feel this way? You should know better than to ask such a question. Your will has always been your own. For now, do not worry about such things. Focus instead on your mission. If you are here, I expect it is for something specific. Yes, he must learn to protect himself, so now I want to provide him the tools to do so. What should I give him, my lord? From the light, an object began to manifest itself, becoming solid and clattering to the floor with a rattle. Levia's eyes flowed over the long staff in awe as she reached over to lift it from the ground. It was absolutely beautiful, carved from solid sapphire and light in her hands. I know this thing, Levia commented, running her fingers tenderly over the polished stone. You also gave this to Job, didn't you? This was his staff. Yes, my daughter. This is the rod of Aaron, passed down from Jacob to his children, and from Judah to his as well, and finally to Moses and Aaron by his ancestors, and it is blessed with my power. Just as it guided the Israelites through the desert, so too will it guide Ishmael on your quest. I am certain that he will make great use of it. Take care of it, Levia. Clutching it to her chest, she nodded her head. Yes, sir. Thank you. You may go, Levia. Go and guide the son of Job to his destiny, and to yours. She stood, scooping up her shoes before pausing for a moment. Turning back one last time, she moved closer to the brilliant dancing flame. One last question, Lord. I don't think Ishmael believes me when I tell him that it is his role to combat the shrine. If it were to come from you, I think he would be more accepting. Why won't you speak with him? For a moment, he paused as if deciding if it was a question he wanted to answer. It has been many millennia since I last walked the earth in physical form, he explained. I know that now many humans doubt my existence. Many feel that I have abandoned them, while others seek to credit me for all that they have accomplished. I do not intend to interfere with Ishmael's journey more than I must. I may provide him the tools, but it is still his hand that must perform the task. I would rather him be unaware of my influence, for if he were to know of my involvement, he would inevitably come to rely on it too heavily. Once he succeeds, however, it will show two things: that humans are strong enough to accomplish extraordinary things without my intervention, and that even so, I have not abandoned them. I will appear to him, in time. For now, you are not to mention any of this. He must believe that all of these actions are his own choosing. Yes, sir, Levia answered before giving a graceful bow. Opening the door, she stepped outside and looked down at the watch she'd found. Sure enough, only a few minutes had passed for her, but the clocks in the library registered as it being 4 hours later. With a sigh, she adjusted her timepiece and then continued back to where I sat, still scanning the book's contents. When she saw me, she smiled. I hadn't even noticed that she was standing there. I was so forced into my concentration. Hey there, she called to me, moving to my side. I blinked for a moment, looking up from the pages to see her smiling at me. That smile was so warm and cute, for a moment my heart skipped a beat. Oh, hi, Levia. I'm almost done, I swore, flipping to the next page. Sitting beside me, she placed her hand over mine and closed the book. What's wrong? Nothing, she replied. I just wanted to tell you that you should take a break. It's been a while. Besides, I have something for you. When she placed the beautiful gemstone staff on the table, I couldn't believe my eyes. This is the rod of Aaron, she explained. It's what will allow you to channel your magic. It's very powerful, and very important that you take good care of it. Isn't this the same staff that was used for the plagues of Egypt? Yes. I don't know if I'm comfortable having this, I tried, moving to hand it back to her. I mean, what if I accidentally end up releasing the plagues on the country? Somehow I think losing all of the firstborn sons would be devastating, especially since I'm one. Ishmael, it took Moses and Aaron 40 years and God's direct teaching to use that spell. You have neither, and it's not something you can just do by accident. You'll be fine. I know it. Look, I'll even teach you your first spell. Take your staff, tap it once on a stone. Do not tap it twice. Believe me, bad idea. Okay, I stammered, nervously tapping the stone floor with the rod. After a few moments, water erupted from the floor like a geyser. A geyser. Like a geyser, old man. Water erupted from the floor like a geyser, forming a large pool on the ground. I'm certain my eyes were the size of saucers. How much weirder could my life become? Levia nodded for me to tap the puddle again, and when I did, it slowly drained back into nothingness, leaving the floor as dry as when it had began. This is so weird, I murmured. Now, I know that's not super impressive, but I've got something else to help. Moving to the bookshelf again to seek out another grimoire. Placing it in front of me, she took the Lesser Key of Solomon back to store it in its proper place. As I began to flip through the new book, which was titleless, I couldn't help but notice it was all handwritten. Curiously, I flipped to the end to find a name scratched in the back cover of the book. No way! I gasped in shock. Edgar Allan Poe? Really? I repeated, flashing her the name. I think you would be shocked to learn just how many people you know of have been involved in this war, she murmured. The Trine may dislike humans, but they know that they have a value. Many men and women have fallen to false promises of splendor and power only to be betrayed at their last moments. She took a deep breath, and I could tell the subject was one that weighed on her. I'm going to get us some food, she announced. You continue studying, though, okay? Okay, I agreed as she climbed the stairs to the elevator. Once she was gone, I began my work once more on learning the magic I'd need to fight back against the cryptids. I'm glad that once this chapter's over, we'll be done. I am starting to get very tired. Meanwhile, Sam soared high above on thermal currents. Her family had trained her well in avoiding the detection of humans, but it had been so long since she'd flown, she didn't even truly care if she was seen or not anymore. From her honey-colored eyes, steamy drops rolled down her cheeks. She hated what she'd done to Ishmael. She hated that she'd failed her family. But more than anything right now, she hated herself. Ishmael was her best friend. He'd trusted her, and he needed her. What did she do? She deceived him. The worst part of it all, she decided, was that Ishmael didn't just trust her. He relied on her as an anchor of normalcy in his new chaotic life, just as he'd been for her when she first discovered her heritage. She could still remember the first day she heard her mother's voice in her head. She thought she was going insane. But sure enough, her mother proved to her the truth. Her parents were not her real parents, and she herself was not human. Sam was a phoenix, and that meant that she was part of this war whether she liked it or not. Right now, she really, really wished she wasn't. Unlike the other two factions, the Skyrakers were not an army, they were family. And like family, they were supposed to always be able to count on one another. Maybe I'm just not the sort of person to be counted on, Sam thought sadly. She was jarred from her thoughts when a sudden shriek came from overhead, just as an enormous weight slammed down on her back. Traitor! Her attacker screamed as the two began to hurtle toward the ground in a spiraling battle of death. Momo. Mosey. Are you done? You finished? Thank you. The voice was one Sam recognized, that of Ropin, one of her cousins who was more kin to a pterosaur than any bird of the modern day. She answered in kind to her cousin, lashing out with flames and beating her with her wings. Ropin sank her claws deeper into Sam's flesh before both of them slammed into the ground with a heavy thud that left a smoldering crater beneath them. Thank you, Momo, for coming and blocking my view. Yes, you're my sweet little fluffy dragon. I know. Okay, keep your claws to yourself. In an instant, both were up in their human forms, fists raised and ready to fight. I'm not a traitor, Sam argued. We can talk to him and get him to see reason. Silence, ape lover. I knew you would never be good enough to be tasked with something so important. Your feelings cloud your duty to the cause. Just as Sam was about to throw the first punch, a strong grip grabbed her wrist, stopping her mid-wind-up. That's enough, both of you, As she wheeled about, she came face to face with Morgar, a large man whose face was framed by a feathery beard that concealed his true identity, that of the Cornish owlman. While he was a younger member of the family in comparison to the others, his wise ways and his serious expression often netted him the respect reserved for elders. For Sam, there was more to it, however, as he had personally taken on the responsibility of serving as her godfather when her adoptive parents had passed away. Without his help and guidance, there was no telling what could have become of her. Samantha, explain yourself, he instructed. Why is it your task has not been accomplished? Because she is little more than a disgusting ape pretending to be a skyraker, Ropin snarled, but with one glare from Morgar silenced her quickly. Just in case, however, he added coldly, do not speak unless spoken to, Ropin. Should you lay hands on my goddaughter again, I will personally see to it that your wings are ripped from you, so that you can walk a day in her shoes and learn what it's like to be human. Go ahead, Sam. The phoenix's eyes began to well up with more tears before she threw her arms around her godfather tightly. It was awful, Morgar. You should have seen the look on his face, the way he looked at me. It was as if his heart was breaking in front of me. He's always been there for me. I've done my best to always be there for him, but now I feel like I've betrayed him. Ropin let out a sigh of disgust before the owlman once more shot her a glare that made her throw up her hands in surrender. I know that the Skyrakers are my family, Sam whispered. I would never betray my family, but please don't make me do this. Ishmael's my family too. I love him. See, she admits it, Ropin cried. In love with a human. She puts him in the same respect that she puts us. It's disgusting. Shut your beak, Ropin, Sam shouted before her godfather gently squeezed her shoulders to calm her. Do not let her get under your skin. She is yet to understand what love is. While I can appreciate and empathize with your feelings, Samantha, Ropin does carry a point. It would seem you place a higher value on the human than you do on the family. No, that's not true, Sam protested. I'm loyal to the family. I've shown that. I've followed after him, and I discovered that he's the key. But how can the family ask me to kill someone I love so much? Do none of them have anyone that's not in the family that they care about? Of course we do, Samantha, he assured her. That does not change that we cannot simply allow your mother to rot in her prison until the end of time. The lunar eclipse is upon us, and when it happens, the seals will be flexible. If we kill the son of Job, he will not be able to permanently seal your mother, nor will he be able to free our enemies, should they get to him first. It seems one of Leviathan's own has already infiltrated his heart. I don't need to tell you how dangerous that is. The red-headed beauty nodded solemnly in understanding. Isn't there another way? Sam whispered. You said he won't be able to free our enemies. What if I convinced him to free Mom? He cares about me, I know it. If I talk to him, maybe. Yeah, right, Ropin scoffed. What does a human care about our kind? If he's anything like his ancestors before him, he'll be just as much of a weak, stupid, cowardly. She didn't even get to finish the sentence before Sam wheeled on her and struck her hard in the jaw with a right hook. Ropin crumpled to the ground, her hand resting on her cheek in shock as Sam loomed over her. Don't talk about him that way. Don't you ever say something like that about him again, she shouted. You don't know him like I do. You don't have any right to accuse him of anything, much less insult him. Why, you insolent... Ropin was ready to lunge at Sam when Morgar stepped between the two of them, intervening in the fight. Why do you stop me and not her, Uncle? Ropin accused. I know she is your favorite, but damn it, I am your actual blood. Blood is not everything, he explained calmly. Ropin, there is a time for hostility and there is a time for patience, and right now you are incapable of showing the second. You are allowing your blind distrust of humanity rule your head, and simply put, you had that punch coming. Now I suggest you return home before I consider walloping you myself. Grumbling to herself, she turned, spread her wings, and took off into the air as her uncle had instructed. With the two of them now alone, the owlman turned to face Sam once again, an apologetic smile on his face. Sam bit her lip nervously. In her heart, she was certain what he was about to say, and if he gave her the order, she wasn't entirely sure if she could follow it. Sam, Morgar, please, she pleaded. Don't make me kill him. I can't do it. Sam, he began again. Please, I love him. I've never felt for anyone the way I feel for him. And, Sam. Immediately the phoenix fell quiet, her eyes angled at the ground as she awaited the order she'd been dreading. You're right, he stated, causing her to look up in surprise. Killing him is not the only way, Samantha. It is, however, the fastest way. I assure you our enemies will not be so kind as to spare his life for the sake of something as noble as love. I will talk to the family. Right now, I want you to return to him, apologize, and attempt to convince him to release your mother. Be aware, though, my dear, that should you fail, and he attempt to step foot on our mountain in hopes of sealing your mother away for good, he will be slain. Should you intervene then and try to prevent his fate, then I will have no choice but to strike you down, too. Do I make myself clear? Yes, sir, Sam squealed in delight before throwing her arms around him with a big hug. Despite the weight behind his threat, she couldn't stop smiling. She'd been given another chance. She could redeem herself to Ishmael. She could go back and explain, and he'd forgive her, and everything would be okay again. I'll go right now, she swore. I promise I won't let the family down. I swear it. I know you won't. Her grandfather grinned, watching as she exploded into a brilliant burst of flames and rocketed off towards the sky above. As she soared away, her godfather stood there. She truly had grown into a remarkable young woman, but in his mind all he could see was the faint outline of the little girl he'd taken under his wing. Ziz, your daughter is truly an impressive young woman. She is learning quickly to follow her heart's judgment, just as we have taught her to do. Was she ever like this in any of her past lives? After a few moments of nothing but the sound of chirping cicadas, another voice echoed in his mind. Samantha has always been a passionate one. She was my first, you know. God thought she was so beautiful that he never wished to be rid of her. She was never allowed to eat the eternal fruit, true, so he made it to where he would be able to watch her grow, time and time again. I think it says a lot of this key that he has captured her heart so. I truly do wish her the best, but more than that, I fear that I will lose her to him. Never before have I seen her so deeply in love with anyone, not even when she was under the name Samyukta. I do so hope that this boy loves her in return. I dread seeing her tears if he should not. He will, Morikawa chuckled. Only a fool would be so bold as to deny the heart of our princess. I will continue to keep watch over her, my queen. You need to rest, save your strength, so that if her plan should fail, you may have the power to break free from your prison. When no response came, he assumed that Ziz had taken his advice, leaving him now standing alone in the field. He truly did hope that Samantha would find happiness with Ishmael, but if the boy broke her heart, he would show the fool just what happens when someone harms a bird's young. And with that, we are going to stop here at Chapter 8. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It's so appreciated. The next time that I have Insomnia, we'll go ahead and start this up again. If you guys have any comments or any sort of advice on my accents or my voices, please feel free to share them with me. I'm always eager to listen. Starting Wednesday, we're going to have a session 0 on the new channel, Alder Fox Adventures, where the group will be discussing what sort of characters that they want to make. We haven't gotten the new layout yet, but once we do, it will be all set up and ready to go for our new game. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I really appreciate the time that you took to listen to my reading, and I hope that you all have a wonderful night. Thanks again.